I would like to focus on how to make pretty much anything you play sound as good as possible. Hey everyone, it's Karri here, and in this lesson I'm gonna go over the Metallica medley I did in E standard, covering 5 different songs. So the songs were, if I just remember the names and the order correctly, Sad But True, then we have For Whom the Bell Tolls, then we have Welcome Home, Sanitarium, then we have To Live Is To Die, and then finally Fade to Black. So these are all like relatively simple riffs, but I didn't want to do all like Enter Sandman, one intro, just super slow and simple riffs. So this is a pretty easy medley, but it's gonna also have like a little bit of challenge. So it's definitely something worth practicing. And I want to go over some details in these riffs to really make them sound as good as possible. So how usually people learn songs is just checking some tabs online, then just learning the tabs. And usually the problem is that tabs they don't usually have all the small details in them. Sometimes they even have, often they have a little bit wrong notes here and there. And I wouldn't focus on this lesson necessarily playing the riffs 100% the way that James or Kurt plays them originally. But I would like to focus on how to make pretty much anything you play sound as good as possible, and these are just some example riffs for that. And also I want to leave you off with the idea that you should always kind of compare the tabs, check out some tabs, learn the notes, and then listen at the original song and try to hear if it sounds the same or if there's something wrong in there. So those are the 2 main things I want to focus on. So let's start with the Sad But True riff. So yeah, really simple, not too fast. And the first thing I want to say is that when you got these E power chords in a heavy riff like this, don't play them like this. Just super softly, carefully. Listen to the acoustic sound of my guitar when I play it really softly versus when I play it really aggressively with a good amount of power in the picking. Little accidental open strings, but so you can hear that little nice snap in there. And when you add the, all of the effects on top of that, versus softly. So it's a huge difference in just E power chords, really simple, It doesn't require much to play it on the left hand, but to make it sound as good as possible, you want to really pay attention to that, those little details that make up for the tone in your playing. So you can try out different, palm muting positions, different pick angles, just, different things to find out what makes the strings and the power chord sound the best possible. I personally, this is just a personal opinion, but I really like that little snap you get from the string. So yeah, so that's how you start off the riff. Other things, so just some pull-offs. You pick the fretted notes, then you pull off to the open string. So A string 5th fret to open, then 1st fret to open, then E string 3rd fret to open E string. And some things to consider in this one is don't bend the notes too much before doing the pull-off so it doesn't sound like so you don't go out of tune. And also, when you're picking pretty hard, try to focus on not putting too much pressure with the left hand onto the fretboard, because that makes the notes go a little bit out of tune. So just left hand is all nice, relaxed, natural feeling. But with right hand you can add some power. And this little, you can do a different type of vibrato for that. The main thing is you want to give some life to that note. And I personally like, pretty wide vibrato, but that doesn't really work in this riff. So it's just nice. Just pretty narrow vibrato, so you don't bend it too much. And I wouldn't just focus on that note too much in this lesson, because I assume that this is mainly focused for beginner to intermediate guitar players. Beginners who want to just learn some cool riffs, and intermediate guitar players who want to, get some more details, better tone in their playing. So vibrato is it's something that you of course should learn and practice when you're a beginner as well. But it's something that just for the sake of learning this riff, that vibrato is not necessarily the most important aspect. But a few key things about vibrato: you want to make sure that the pitch always returns back to the original, and also that it has a nice rhythm, so it goes with the flow of the riff. So it has like almost like a nice timing to the small bends you're doing. So pitch returns back to the original, nice timing. And also, in vibrato you want to make sure that the highest pitch, the pitch you bend to, that also remains the same throughout those little bends. So it doesn't kind of... It doesn't kind of waver around. It should be kind of a controlled, nice, smooth up and down between two certain pitches. So that's quite a lot of talk about the kind of not really the main thing in this riff. But then you get the ending. So there you have a little bend. So just a tiny bend, and you can check out, the notes specifically in the tabs. And I want to mainly focus on the kind of the details in these riffs. So that's pretty much for the first riff. The next one is For Whom the Bell Tolls, and that can be, depending on what kind of a string set you have, that can be pretty scratchy sounding. So I like to use like really bright string sets. Okay, these are like super old ones and the intonation is awful. Apologies for that. And they seem to be pretty dirty as well, so should change them. But you want to try to avoid this, but usually in riff like this where you have the sustain in these chords, you can't really lift up the hand. So you just want to make the slide kind of short and snappy, so it almost matches with the picking. So it kind of hides it a little bit. But some other things, of course, it's like a heavy riff. So find out the good tone for, let's say, the E power chord. Right amount of palm muting, you got the palm at the right position. And then just keep the hand at the same position and let the left hand do this. And all these last notes are non-palm muted, so you can just lift up your hand and give a nice smack for those power chords. So you can hear the acoustic sound that there's really some picking action going on. So instead of yeah. And the other variation is just as you can see in the tabs. And yeah, this is a really, really simple riff. And maybe a few things to mention and pay attention to is not to press too much with the palm so your strings don't get out of tune. So when you do like a heavier sound, left hand relaxed, right palm doesn't push the strings, and it's the actual pick that does that nice, gives nice power and nice tone to the notes. And when you're moving these power chords, you can try to avoid this where your thumb kind of stays static, because that's going to be really difficult to kind of start bending your fingers on the fretboard. So just try to keep the, you know, behind the neck pretty loose so the thumb follows. And you don't have to keep it in this position, by the way. You can keep it anywhere, but the main thing is you don't kind of have the thumb stuck. And don't try to replicate any of like how I keep my thumb. That's just, you know, what works for me. And try to really understand these points that, okay, the thumb should be kind of shouldn't be stuck here. It should be almost like relaxed in these kind of moving power chord riffs. And I'm not talking about where to keep the thumb. It's just what's the most natural playing position for you that works for this type of riff. So you can keep your left arm and hand relaxed. So the next riff is gonna be Welcome Home, Sanitarium. So some little details about this riff. It's really straightforward. I would usually just downpick this whole thing because it's not like super fast. So. But for the sake of this, let's keep it simple and alternate pick. You can also alternate pick these notes in between if you want, because this is one of the faster riffs in this kind of a simple Metallica riffs lesson. And also the timing is a little bit tricky perhaps, but what you can do is slow down the medley video or slow down the backing track on YouTube. Medley video on YouTube, backing track on your Windows Media Player, whatever you're using. Just listen at the timing. Try to, let's say, count the beats, you know, count the pulse of the song, and then at the same time listen how these different notes match to that pulse. So you get kind of an idea where you want to hit those notes, so you get that kind of a nice groove for your playing. So you don't have to, of course when you're performing you don't necessarily have to count everything, but you want to feel where each note needs to be placed. And to be able to feel something, you of course first need to understand it. So counting is a really good way to understand where everything is placed within a measure or within the riff. So you got this little scratch. And for these, you know, just like in the Sad But True, you got. You can just find out what's the best position for the left hand. You can just lightly touch the strings. so I'm not pressing on the fretboard. I'm just lightly resting them over the strings. So you can find out what's the right position for the left hand to get a cool sound. So you don't want to press too lightly so you don't get these harmonies or harmonics. You want to get nice dead notes with the nice picking sound. And I found that, this position is pretty well around the 3rd fret, index finger. But I'm actually using the other fingers as well. So index finger is near the 3rd fret. So it's all about what kind of sound you like. So you can have the hand pretty much anywhere, but yeah. The next riff will be what that one was, To Live Is To Die. So, slow, heavy, simple riff. So we have some power chords. This is something where I like to really, really give some even more power to the notes, to the strings with my picking hand. And again, when you get these kind of scratchy notes, you can do it on not even necessarily aim a certain strings. What you can do is kind of try out different ways. How does it sound when you pick the only E string like this? What if you add some more strings to that? So you can hear what's the right amount of strings to get the sound that you really like. I think I'm using E, A, and D string when I'm doing these scratches, but that's not necessarily the main idea. You want to just find out a nice position and get the sound that you like from these big scratches. And yeah, that's a really simple, straightforward riff. Little pause at the... So when you get... So there's a nice little pause, and those are kind of little details that let's continue with the last riff, Fade to Black, because the previous riff was super simple, so I'm gonna see in the editing phase if I missed anything from that. But yeah, so we have... So that's pretty simple riff, and you want to pay attention to the different pauses here. And then to the tone of these palm mutes. And that you can do by, changing the amount of power you use. I don't like to really use, the maximum picking power in this riff. So it's like a little bit less than that. To get a nice kind of a little bit loose tone for those. And also my palm is pretty close to the bridge, so it's not like... And the first variation of this riff ends on the D string 9th fret, and that's the non-palm muted ending note. And I like to use, because I use pinky for my power chords, then I like to end this kind of a gallop riff with the pinky, so I can really nicely shift to the power chords. So if you use ring finger, it's gonna be easy to just shift down. And I'm not sure if they play it live or in the original version, by going down the fretboard, like something like that. But if you play in this position, It's definitely useful to end with the same finger you use for the power chords. And the second time you play the riff, everything else is the same, but the ending note changes to A string 10th fret. So you just palm mute the 10th fret of the A string. And that's pretty much it. Then you end the medley with just these same power chords, both picked, and a little slide at the end. So I hope you enjoyed this little lesson, and I'm sure that there were, at least some details there that you maybe haven't thought about previously. So that's always the important part when you're learning new things is don't just look at the notes that the riff has. Try to also pay attention to the different dynamics, those little details in there, also the timing, that you get the right timing for the riff, you get a good muting sound, everything just sounds nice, because that's that little extra thing that will make everything sound just a lot better than if you are just focusing on playing the right notes and then not paying attention to how those notes sound like. So if I would have to recommend, let's say you don't know how to play these riffs, you want to practice them, then the first thing you want to do is just get familiar with these different notes on the fretboard. And when you get familiar with the notes, how these riffs go, that you don't have to really pay that much attention to these, what your left hand is doing. So you don't have to kind of memorize, okay, what was the next note in this riff? But when you get a little bit more comfortable, then you can start adding these kind of little details to that. So, paying attention to the picking sound. And that's a really good order, generally speaking, to approach learning different riffs. Is first get kind of a basic hang of it, and then start adding all these kind of details that really make up for the perfect final sound in that riff. And yeah, thanks for checking out this video. If you have any questions, leave a comment. And if you haven't checked out the medley yet, I'll add like a link thing somewhere on the screen, which you can just click to watch the medley. And also the tabs and backing tracks are in the description. And if you want to have more of these medleys, any requests for the bands, maybe more difficult Metallica medleys, anything, just leave a comment. And if you enjoy the videos, lessons, you can, of course, have the freedom to click the subscribe button. But I won't be doing anything if you don't press that. So don't worry about that. So yeah, see you in the next video. Bye.